Good evening. Welcome to the Doty Report on Comprehensive Health. My name is Beverly Walker and I am your host for tonight. And we have several guests here tonight. We have Reverend Tommy Johnson of Outside the Walls Ministry, and we have the illustrious Ronald Doty of the Georgia Doty program. So, I would like to start off tonight by welcome all of our viewers. If you have a question as we begin to talk about our subjects tonight, please call in if you have a question and ask your question, and if we are able, we will give you an answer. This is our last show for this roundup that we're doing. And I want to start off by welcoming Reverend Tommy Johnson.
Thank you.
I am so used to being around him, it's kind of hard calling him Reverend Tommy Johnson because I'm so used to just calling him Red. But Don Doty, you are the CEO of the Georgia Doty Comprehensive Health Community Outreach Program.
Yes, ma'am.
And I remember the last time we did the show. On the last show, you was also a guest as well.
Yes.
Along with myself. Tell us about the program that you started doing in the adult transitional facilities, and then we'll talk with Reverend Tommy Johnson about his program.
Well, we received a 5-year grant from the Department of IDPH to go into the prisons, and we were the first program in the state of Illinois to actually go in and educate the inmates coming out, and we call them the re-entry population, on hepatitis C. And hepatitis C was a very major primary health issue that a lot of inmates were being exposed to from things dealing with body tattoos. I think we can relate to how they tattoo each other with fountain pens and ink pens, and that exposed many inmates dealing with hepatitis C. A lot of the inmates there are in prisons, and older prisons, that are using lead pipes. They're not transferred over to copper yet, and that gave them a lot of exposure to hepatitis C. A lot of times in prison, you're not allowed to have a cover on your toilet. And so when they would wash their face and they use their washcloth and they leave it on the sink close to the toilet, there's a lot of microscopic germs that are in the air, and you figure you got 300 inmates on one floor or one tier, and they're all flushing at the same time. Microscopically, a lot of this germs expose a lot of the inmates in terms of hepatitis B. So there's a lot of issues of a lot of inmates coming out of prison with viruses that they didn't have when they went in, and they're not being screened as well as coming out. And what our program did, we reached them before they were released back into society, and we had to educate them and we had to test them for hepatitis C. And I was very surprised at the outcome and the evaluations, that not only they did not know about it, but a lot of the activities in prison exposed them more to hepatitis C. And when they come out, one of the first things they don't want to use is a condom. And so we have a problem educating them on the importance of condoms. But more so, we got to educate the families of the inmates that are coming out, because they have to stand tall and strong about using condoms, not knowing what their significant other may have done and activities within the prisons.
So as I remember that program, Don, because I work with you as an educator as well on HIV and hepatitis C, and it was a magnificent program. And just as you said, we tested them for HIV infection as well as hepatitis C.
Yes.
We was able to refer them to other community programs if they needed treatment. And so now, what are you doing now in the community, since your program is the community outreach?
Well, the state decided to divert funds for prevention and education to direct services. So instead of educating you of not getting disease, they're trying to deal with those who already have the disease of hepatitis and HIV.
Okay.
Education is very important. Prevention is very important, so that you wouldn't get to that stage that you needed to get a liver transplant or have your hepatitis create into cancer. So now we're kind of targeting our programs to the veterans. We're trying to target the veterans that are in prison, that are coming out, and reconnect them to the benefits and the services that they rightfully earned by fighting in the war for our country.
Okay, now, and to my understanding, you are also a veteran as well.
Yes, Marine.
My man, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service.
Okay, Don. So, and would you like to tell us about your experience with hepatitis C?
Yes. Well, I found out later as I was trying to educate folks on diabetes and other health disparity issues that I got exposed to hepatitis, not knowing what hepatitis was it HIV? I was totally lost. This is back in the early 60s, 70s, when I first found out that I had it, not knowing what hepatitis was at the time. And we found out that from this air gun, this very, very air gun here, it was declared by the government as being faulty. And then before we went to Vietnam, we all got in a line, and maybe say there's 50 guys, and I'm number 51, with this air gun. All 50 individuals' blood was contaminated into the gun itself. By the time they would get me, I'd get 51 of their blood attached to the gun. So everybody caught each other. So this gun here was what exposed all veterans that were between 1961 and 1971 that was going to mostly basically Vietnam, were exposed to Hep C. And about 70%, I say 60 to 70% of the veterans that were going over were exposed to hepatitis C.
Wow.
One of the problems, though, that a lot of minorities have with Hep C as a veteran is that the system stereotypes you because you're black, that you might have been on drugs because it's a blood to blood, as a high risk factor on doing drugs by needles. But people have to realize Hep C you can get exposed from in a barber shop, the barber using the same razor. The ladies getting their nails done to make sure that machines and the stuff they use for the cuticles came out of that machine on time. A lot of nurses are getting stuck accidentally with needles of getting exposed to Hep C. Body tattooing is the second highest factor of getting Hep C, because if you look at the basketball players in the NBA, you look at a lot of the college sports, tattooing is a big issue. And before it was really to a point of educating people on Hep C, they were tattooing each other. There was like in the natural, if you're in a club or a gang, you tattooed each other automatically, not within a sanitized, certified facility. And so hepatitis is a little more rampant than people really realize, and education and awareness is very important.
Okay, so as you say, hepatitis C is transmitted by blood-to-blood contact, and there are many forms or many ways that we can come in contact with someone else's blood. It's also transmitted through dried blood, so we have to make sure that we are very, very careful if we're coming in contact with another person's blood, whether it's on a razor, whether it's on a desk. You just don't want to come in contact with another person's blood. If you're someplace and a person cut themselves real bad, you want to make sure that you're covering yourself, your skin, so that you're not coming in contact with themselves. A lot of times people bite their nails down to where it bleeds, and you just want to make sure that you are covering any open sores or wounds or burns if the skin is open, so that you're not coming in contact with anyone else's blood. So that's your piece of education for tonight. We want to also talk with Reverend Tommy Johnson. He has a ministry that he does, and I've been to some of his programming, and this man is amazing. I don't know how he does what he does, but he does it. It's called Outside the Walls Ministry, and so I just want to take a minute and kind of ask him, what does Outside the Walls mean when you look at that as a ministry?
The Outside the Walls, and thank you. The Outside the Walls Ministries came about primarily because of the Great Commission in the Bible, and when Jesus was telling us to go out. I noticed that there were a lot of people that would come to church, and in the church, when I come, I get a big boost and uplift. I feel like whatever's going on in my life is manageable, and that there's hope. Well, I find that there are a lot of people that don't come to church. And how are they going to get that message? And that's when it really came to me that we need to go outside the walls of the church. Well, being as I was working with the population of men and women that were incarcerated, I started to realize that a lot of them needed the help that they had not gotten while they were inside when they got outside. So outside the walls of the prison, outside the walls of the church, we try to bridge that gap and be the bridge that's going to make sure that they get from where their need is to where the resource is to fulfill it. And that's the way we began. And going through men and women that we've been able to assist, we found that they have a myriad of needs. And so we couldn't just say, oh, well, we're going to help people coming out of prison and give them hope. Well, giving hope is the framework, the skeleton of faith. But to have faith without doing work is dead. And so we found that we not only now had to be able to mentor and to counsel, but we need to have some tangible help. And so when they came out and they needed housing, it was one thing to pray with them for housing.
Okay.
But you know how it is, Rev, now that we finished praying, where am I going to live?
Right.
So we needed to work with housing. And then we had many that came out that when they went in with substance abuse issues. They weren't addressed. And now they're out with the same issues, which, if not addressed, is going to put them right back where they were. And we know the recidivism rate amongst our people is outrageous. And so we started to work with individuals in the varying areas of need: housing, employment, education, so on and so forth. And so that's how the ministry began and how it has now branched out and grown.
Okay, so it sounds like you just also told us that the purpose of your organization is to kind of help bridge the gap for those individuals that have issues, that need services, as well as other things. They may need counseling in some way. They may need a referral to another social service organization, or they may need prayer. They just may need some of all things. I know when I was a kid, my mother used to always talk about going to the church, talking to the pastor.
That's it.
And that's the backbone. And the church was the backbone of the community, the backbone of the house.
That's right.
If you needed something, you went to the church, you talked to the pastor. And I know now they have a lot of pantries at churches. So in addition to that, the purpose of your program, how do you make things happen? Because I've been to some of your programs where you've been just giving and giving and giving to people. I mean, giving things to them. How do you make that happen?
Well, first, I want to backtrack a little bit and say this. It's a shame that the churches have gone from being the primary social service agency in our community to now being the agency that people walk around to get to. And so over the years, if you go back historically, as you already mentioned, the churches have been and to this day, their track record against any other agency, I don't care who it is, they cannot compete with the church for being able to transform lives and sustain the transformation. We have to now start to educate more churches and more pastors. And what we've done as a ministry is we realized that it was insurmountable for us to do individually. We start to incorporate other churches. We start to allow other people, if they did not want to be at the forefront of this, at least be a contributor to us. And then we'll utilize that resource to assist other people. And everything that we do, and I'm glad you brought that up, we give for free. Our bus passes, and I've been ridiculed and taken to task on this, that we give out bus passes. Well, Reverend, you're giving them those bus passes, and some of them are selling their bus passes and not really using them. Well, I say to them, that we have in the past not given bus passes. People had gotten to the point where nobody was giving out bus passes, and therefore you got a young man or a young lady coming out of institution and you're telling them to go on job interviews, you're telling them to go get help, go get an ID, go to Social Security, go to do these things, but you're not providing them the means. And I've even heard an individual say out of their mouths, well, if you were going to commit a crime, if you were going to get drugs, you would make a way.
Right.
So make a way to get there. And in my mind, you're telling them that you lean on what you know to do. And if what you know to do is to break in somebody's house, if what you know to do is to snatch someone's purse, you've just given them license.
Yeah, okay.
But what we do, we go ahead. I tell them all day, I say, well, Rev, you're giving out these bus passes. You ought to be. And I said, well, listen, we didn't give them out. Now, how's that worked out for us? Now, what we do, we give out bus passes. We assist you and connect you with programs for housing. We connect you with substance abuse treatment. And we have a relationship with treatment agencies all over, not just the city, but the state of Illinois. And we're able to get people into treatment when they, on their own, had not been able to get in. And once they receive the treatment, we're still conversing with them. We're still connected to them while they're engaged. And once they come out, we continue that. And that's the difference between a ministry and a social service agency. They have to talk about wraparound services and all that. Ministries, we're going to do that because that's what we do.
That's what you do.
Let me just ask you a question. What about mental health? I find that with the veterans, PTSD is a very significant mental health issue. But I find that also living in the urban city of Chicago, and urban city, most places where there is a lot of violence and domestic violence, there's a PTSD outside of just being a veteran.
Yes,
and I find that a lot of guys that go in, and women that go in prison, have this PTSD violence mentality, but it's not dealt with while they're in prison, and it becomes worse as they come out.
One of the things that you see is that there, in our society today and in our communities, there's a lot of trauma, as you said.
Yeah.
And men and women are going into institutions having been traumatized.
Right.
It's not being addressed, and therefore these individuals continue on with that same behavior, and maybe it might relinquish somewhat while they're incarcerated, but it's still there.
Right.
And when they come out, so we have to do a better job of screening. We have to do a better job.
Excuse me. I see we have a caller on the line. Caller, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I have a question for you. Both organizations, you all have said some really fantastic things about what both your organizations do. Do you ever work together, or do you have plans to work together?
Which between our
It's between the two agencies. Actually, both of these two agencies, well, as the host, let me just say that both of these two agencies have just come together, and that's why we have Reverend Tommy Johnson on the show. Near the end of the show, we've just found out gotten a lot of information about him. I already knew about Reverend Tommy Johnson. Don Doty just found out, just really kind of met him at the end of last year and began to talk to him. But they are talking in reference to collaborating. Just before the show today, they was also talking about some things that they're doing that they can come together and work on. So I think this meet here today is a good opportunity for them to continue this relationship so that they can begin to work together. And in reference to the mental health issue, I know Don has had some conversation and some issues in reference to trauma. There are some grants that are coming out in reference to trauma now. And Reverend Tommy Johnson is looking for some grants that he can write. So I think this is a really good time, a really good opportunity. Illinois Department of Public Health as well as Chicago Department of Public Health are putting out some grants at this particular time. So there's a good opportunity for them to get together and see what they can partner on and write those grants together and come up with a really, really good pilot program.
I'd like to add something in there. July 28th, one of the things that I find that a lot of people in our community, a lot of the elders, a lot of the gatekeepers of our community, they never get recognized of what they do until they pass away. come July 28th, we're recognizing several individuals in our community, and I think Beverly's going to bring it to your attention and display it. But Tommy is one of the ones, Reverend Tommy is one of the ones that we're recognizing. I think that this awards dinner, July 28th at South Shore Country Club, with other dignitaries that we're going to recognize, will give people opportunity to know more what he provides, and to see how both our agencies can work together and reach the at-risk population within the community. And I think that's where you best be able to help us, is
Yes.
to reach the at-risk population that normally we can't get to.
There are two populations and two areas that we have made strongholds. One is inside the institutions, and the other is amongst the community churches. Those two institutions have to be bridged. There are many resources that lie in the churches that go untapped as a direct result of men and women that are coming out of institutions that have a let's say lack of understanding, and their desire is not to go to church. And I've had many men say, man, I represent God and I know God is good, but I wasn't doing what I needed to do, and I got to wait till I get myself together before I can go to church. And the truth of the matter is, if we could have got ourselves together, we wouldn't need church. We wouldn't need God.
Right.
But that's the reason to go. We now have to empower more pastors, empower more churches, encourage more churches that have prison ministries, outreach ministries. I've been to several churches that have all of these people that are so excited with the zeal of the Lord. They want to do something, they don't have the vehicle to do it. And thereby we connect them with our services, with our organizations, and they now have a vehicle they can participate.
Okay.
I'd like to talk more about...
Go ahead, Don.
No, we want to focus on some of the people on our event.
So I do want to ask you one other question, Reverend Johnson, and
Sure.
that is, what does your future look like in terms of your program outside the walls ministry?
We're in the process now of expanding. What we've been able to do for 14 years has been phenomenal, and I wished I could take credit, but to God be the glory. But what God has done for me in the last year or so is to tell me and share with me and direct my path and how to expand the ministry. We're in the process now of trying to secure a larger space for the ministry. We're in the process now of bringing in more people that we've become associated with over the years, that are licensed counselors, that are people that work with the populations that we're dealing with, and we're bringing them in to have them part of the staff so that we can touch even more lives. One of the things I want to toot the horn of the Illinois Department of Corrections for having reentry summits. Those reentry summits allow agencies like ourselves to go inside the prisons and address the men that are there that now become aware of our agencies.
And women.
And youth. There are youth institutions that we go inside and we do their reentry summits. They become aware, they get our literature. When they then, upon discharge, are looking for the assistance, they can then make the direct call and connect with us.
Okay, well, thank you, Reverend Johnson, for that information. I do want to turn your attention now to the awards gala that Don Doty was talking about. It's the 2018 awards gala, and as the honorees are Brula Bent, who is the CEO of SWIO. We
Sisters
have
Working It Out.
the Sisters Working It Out. We have Father George Clemens, who is a minister and a community activist. We have James Dentley, who is a motivational speaker. Camille Garrett, who is an insurance broker. Eli Williamson, President, No Veteran Left Behind. As well as Jackie Sharp, CEO of Lakeside Community Committee. And the Reverend Tommy Johnson of Outside the Walls Ministry. There you go. This event will be held on July the 28th of 2018. It's going to be held at South Shore Country Club, and it's in the evening. What's the time frame?
It's from the VIPs at 6 and the generals at 7. You can get tickets by calling 312-282-1375. or by our website by PayPal, which is www.georgia, like the state of Georgia, GeorgiaDotyInc.org, www.georgiadotyinc.org.
So yes, we would like for you to call the agency if you have any additional questions about any of the programming that you have seen throughout the last 3 months that we've had on here. If you have any questions about any additional questions or education information needed about HIV or hepatitis, you can call the Georgia Doty program and they can get that information to you, refer you to those to get those questions answered. And we would like to thank all of our viewers tonight and thank our caller for calling in. Reverend Tommy Johnson, I want to give you the opportunity to have a few last words.
I'd like to say this, that we now have a unique opportunity to make a difference in what's going on in our communities. I think that I was once asked at an event to speak and surprised them because I only spoke for 1 minute. And what I said was, if everyone would start right where they are, just use what you got and just do what you can, we can make a difference. And
I know they were surprised.
yeah, they were surprised. I only had 1 minute, but I'm honored. I want to say about this award ceremony, I am so honored and so humbled that I was included. And Father Clemens has been a hero of mine for many years, and some of the others that are on the ticket. I just appreciate. I want to thank you all for even considering me.
Again, we want to thank our callers for calling in and thank our viewers for viewing this evening. Thank you.